Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Non-stop coverage of Michael Cohen. You can't see him, of course. No cameras in the courtroom. But my goodness, the news networks of America just obsessed with this sort of stuff. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is out saying this.
He's a corrupt judge, and he's a conflicted judge, and he ought to let us go out and campaign and get rid of this scam. Every single legal analyst, even CNN, even MSDNC, they're saying, there's no case here. Thank you very much.
He's not wrong. I mean, the networks are beginning to downplay the likelihood of a guilty verdict, even with Michael Cohen testifying. It's kind of remarkable. I don't want to talk about that, though. This is where I have the potential to get myself in trouble. I have a smart and highly educated audience, but there will be people who take this out of context, but I need to do this with you. I thought a lot about how to do it, and I need to do it with you because I got a smart audience, and I want to make you even smarter. But the caveat here is this isn't an endorsement. This is an analysis. And one of the things that I am finding and that frustrates me to no end is increasingly, so our side of the aisle used to be very good about understanding the other side of the aisle and their thinking. And it's why we could out-debate them, whether it's on the life issue or economics or so much. We could out-debate the left because we understood their arguments. They were always contemptuous and dismissive of our arguments and therefore underperformed. It's one of the things I ran into for years when I was at CNN, where the left had no sort of intellectual curiosity about my side's arguments. And so we could always outperform them on TV and still do to a degree because we know their arguments. But increasingly, there are those on the right who don't wish to understand the arguments of the left and therefore have a harder time debating them. So I want to spend time right now answering the questions, what the hell is Joe Biden thinking? Because a growing number of people on the right are seeding the idea that Joe Biden is still not going to be the nominee for the Democrats. Many of you thinking right now is that he's going to drop out. They're going to do a bait and switch before the convention in August. Now, I think they should. If Donald Trump really is the existential threat the Democrats say he is, then Joe Biden needs to go away. But I don't actually think it's going to happen. And there's a difference between saying it should happen and it's going to happen. And there are growing voices on the right saying it's going to happen with epistemic certainty. It's going to happen. Now, it's not. And the funny thing is, none of these people will ever be held accountable for insisting it's going to happen. I don't think it is. And one of the reasons so many people are insisting, I think it should, but I don't think it's likely. I'm not going to say never, but I don't think it's going to happen. Whether or not I think it should, and it should. If they want to win. But I at least want you to understand what the Democrats are thinking, what Joe Biden is thinking, so that you understand why it's possible but not probable. The Biden team is thinking something that all of you think. The polls are wrong. You got to understand that if you believe the polls are wrong, why would you drop out? All this, and what's so funny here is that this counterintuitive conflation of emotions where you have people on the right who say, look at the polling, Joe Biden should drop out, and then all the time say the polling's wrong. I don't believe the polls. The polls don't tell me what I want to hear, therefore I don't believe the polls. But look at the polls. Joe Biden's going to drop out. Now, he should, but he's not, because Joe Biden doesn't believe the polls. And let me say it this way more precisely. It's not that Joe Biden doesn't believe the polls. It's that Joe Biden doesn't believe the top line number reflects what's happening in the undercurrents of the polls. When you take a poll, you get the top line numbers. Trump is at 45%. Joe Biden is at 40%. So the race is, there's a 5-point difference. Joe Biden doesn't look at the superficial top line polling number, 45 Trump, 40 Biden, and everybody else somewhere 15% or so. Joe Biden's looking at the underlying numbers, the crosstabs. When you get a poll from a pollster, it's thick. I did a poll one time for a congressional candidate running for office, and the polling crosstab binder was about 3.5 inches thick. You get a lot of data in the polling because it lines up people. Now, you're dealing with ever smaller groups of people, but you start with like 1,000 likely voters, and you're dealing with maybe 100 people under 30. Maybe you're dealing with 50 black people and 100 Hispanic people, and smaller numbers give you larger margins of error. But the Biden team, they look at the top line number and then they look at the underlying number and they say there's no way Donald Trump is doing as well with young voters as this poll says, particularly because these young voters say they lean Democrat, they say they're going to vote, and they're overwhelmingly voting, for example, Democratic Senate candidates. Therefore, when they get to the ballot, they're not going to leave the top line blank. So the top line polling number shows that they're not voting for Joe Biden, but when they get into the ballot box, if you survey them, are you really going to leave it blank? They're not going to. So Biden thinks that the polling misrepresents the youth vote. They also think it misrepresents the black vote. That's their contention in Georgia, where I am, that all the polling understates Joe Biden's support from the black community. But there's more than that as well. Joe Biden also has a theory of the race. Every candidate, when they run, has a theory of the race. And the theory of the race is, how do you think the voters are going to align and what's going to make them align that way? Joe Biden's theory of the case is very simply this, that when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, the people most likely to vote, the people who are going to go vote, are the people who hate Donald Trump more than they hate Joe Biden. So they're going to go to the polling and they're going to grit their teeth and hold their breath, and they're going to check Joe Biden's name because they can't stomach Donald Trump coming back, and that is white people in the suburbs in particular. They look at Nikki Haley continuing to get 20-25% of the vote. And they see Donald Trump has underlying fundamental philosophical problems with part of the Republican Party, that the national public opinion polling right now overstates Trump, and that as we move into August, September, October, just like with the big red wave in 2022, that the overexposure of Donald Trump is going to dissipate that momentum and wipe it out. So there will be a Biden resurgence. There's merit to his argument. Biden doesn't believe the top line numbers in the polling. At least he says. Now, you should know, most Democratic strategists do. Biden says he doesn't, but most Democratic strategists do. But when you talk to Democratic strategists about this, they say the same thing. There's a polling trend that they all hang their hat on. And the polling trend, and again, if you talk to most strategists, and this is where I am on the polling, forget the top line number. I don't know that Trump's ahead of Biden. I have no idea what the percentage is. You can get some sense of it from the poll averages like Real Clear Politics or 538, but you shouldn't really hang your hat on that number. What you want to pay attention to are the polling trends. And all of the political strategists that I talk to on the left, on the right, Republican, Democrat, in politics and just in marketing, they all say that polling these days is way more inaccurate than it's ever been. But if everything is trending in a direction across polls, that's probably accurate. And in fact, if you go back to 2022, when the polls were showing a big red wave, most of the major media polls, the exceptions were the Republican pollsters, the media pollsters were all showing this withdrawal of Republican support, a receding wave, and in fact, a growing blue counterwave. And Republicans, myself included, and all of you for that matter, dismissed it as, oh, the media trying to game it. But look at Trafalgar. Trafalgar's not showing this, and Trafalgar was so right. Turns out it was Trafalgar that was wrong, and the media polling was catching it. But it was the trend. It wasn't the number. It was the trend. All the polls started shifting in a particular direction. And when they all shift in a particular direction, you can kind of get a sense that this is where things are headed, even if the top line number's wrong. And so the thing that all the Democratic strategists hang their hat on, the thing that the Biden team hangs its hat on is this. There is a consistent bit of polling data that has shown up from CNN to CBS to ABC to NBC to the New York Times to Fox News to Emerson to Monmouth, all of them. And that is the people most likely to vote in America favor Joe Biden. So if the Biden team looks at this as the people most likely to vote favor Biden, the young vote for Trump is vastly overstated, as is the non-white vote for Trump, vastly overstated. The election is not going to be a groundswell election. There's not going to be a massive wave of voters. In fact, undecided voters right now are so disaffected between both candidates, a lot of them will stay home. There are more people on the left than there are on the right. Therefore, Biden still wins. I think he's wrong, but I understand his position. Now, I think he's wrong because, yes, the people most likely to vote, I think, do favor Joe Biden. They don't like Donald Trump. Donald Trump turns off a lot of people. But you're going to have a lot of disaffected people who are furious with Biden's economy, and they're going to go vote against Joe Biden. Presidential elections still have high turnout, even if it's lower than it was in 2020, still going to be higher turnout than an off-year election. And that higher turnout is going to come with people in the working class who are not white, who are going to vote against Joe Biden. I think the Democrats are making a strategic mistake and a tactical mistake when they believe that non-white voters are safely in their camp. I don't believe that's the case anymore. Now, a majority, yes, but Trump doesn't need a majority of black voters or a majority of Hispanic voters. He only needs to increase the minority share he gets, and I think he's doing that. Also, I do think a lot of people will stay home. And I think that Trump's base ultimately will be more unified and fired up in the election than the Democrats. Why? Because the people who already hate Donald Trump are going to turn out and vote for Joe Biden. But a lot of people who love Donald Trump and a lot of people who are agnostic who hate Joe Biden are going to go vote for Trump. This is why Joe Biden's probably not going to drop out of the race. This is why all the people on the right, online, on talk radio, and on Fox News saying, oh, he's absolutely going to drop out of the race before the convention in August. Why? I don't actually believe it. I think he should, but that's not the same as saying he will. This isn't an endorsement of Joe Biden's ideas. I just want you to try to understand and get in his shoes. So many of you say the polling is wrong. Well, guess what? The president of the United States thinks it is too. He thinks he's winning. And Joe Biden sees the trend lines of the polls that he does believe, and he sees those trends shifting in his direction. There's one fatal weakness, I think, though, in Joe Biden's thinking, and that's the economy. Jerome Powell said today that the Fed's not going to lower interest rates anytime soon, and in fact, interest rate or inflation is higher than expected yet again. I think the economy continues to matter the most. And I think Joe Biden's strategy of telling people, actually, this is the best economy we've had in a very long time is not working for him. And I think my theory of the race is better than Joe Biden's theory of the race. And that is that while the people most likely to vote hate Donald Trump, they remember what his economy was like compared to Joe Biden's. And some of them will stay home to protest Trump and Biden as the nominees. Some of them will turn out and vote for Donald Trump because as much as they hate him, they liked his economy. And a lot of undecided working class, middle class voters and upper income voters are going to say, you know what? He's off Twitter now. He's not as visible anymore. And I kind of like his economy. The trend that Joe Biden is paying attention to is the trend that consistently shows the people most likely to vote hate Donald Trump. The trend that I'm paying attention to is the one that shows every month more and more of those voters come to the conclusion the Trump years weren't so bad. And I think, no pun intended, that trumps the former bit of data, and Joe Biden's theory of the race is wrong.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Over the weekend, we had a massive solar storm that caused, you could see the northern lights all the way down to middle Georgia, where I am. If you follow me on Instagram, at EW Erickson on Instagram, the pictures were stunning, and they were just from my iPhone. I wish I had my DSLR, but I didn't need it. The pictures from my iPhone were incredible. Well, there is a University of Alaska program called HARP. They work with the NOAA studying the ionosphere. It's the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, and it can cause mini northern lights. It uses high-frequency radio waves and energy, hits the ionosphere, and can cause northern lights, a mini version of the northern lights. So you will not be surprised to learn that the conspiracy theorists are convinced that the northern lights are a generation of this project, HARP, and not actually a real thing caused by the sun. Now think about this. Now, HARP testing actually did take place from May 8th to May 10th. And so they're like, see, follow along with me, though. So we have a press conference last Wednesday that a solar flare from the sun is imminent. And I myself got out my telescope. You can see it on Instagram as well. And you can see the sunspots from which these solar flares came on the sun. They actually travel far slower than the speed of light. They're ejections of mass, of plasma, not just light rays. And you could see it. We knew it was coming. They said there'd be northern lights, and there were, and behold. And yet the conspiracy theorists are like, that's that HARP program in Alaska. Never argue with the conspiracy theorists. They've just got apologetics for everything, but it was still cool to see. Now, what's also cool is the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, which uses O3, and it wipes, that's ozone, it wipes out odors. It eliminates odors. Y'all, I just look, okay, let me just tell you, EdenPureDeals.com, the discount code is Eric3. I was at one of my favorite resorts with my family last summer, and there had been a cold snap, and the people in the room had used our fireplace. And I went in, and there was no smoky smell, which was great. And I realized it was the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. In every room, there was an Eden Pure Thunderstorm. They use them. I use them when I travel because you can hold them in the palm of your hand. They're small. You can put them in your travel bag. You can get 3 of them right now. Your upstairs, your downstairs, your basement, your travel bag, like I do. If you have an RV, they're useful there. You plug them up with a USB cord in your car. They wipe out smoke odors, musty odors, litter box odors, pet odors, fried odors, fishy odors, you name it. They wipe out the odors. They also use electrostatic plates to trap the pollen and the dust. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is Eric3. Get 3 of them and save $200. EdenPureDeals.com. Discount code Eric3. Greetings. Welcome. I hope you're doing well. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, always happy to have you. As always, remember, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, and you, my friends, can find the live stream, the show notes, the podcast. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, all those things. Now, notably, if you go to Instagram and you follow me, you should all follow me on Instagram. We put up show clips there, but that's kind of like Philip puts up show clips, but otherwise, like I put up all the stuff when I'm traveling, cooking, you name it. And all my Northern Light pictures, well, the best of the best, I should say, are there. There's one I didn't put up there, though, of my kid, and maybe I should. It's a very funny picture. Send it to Tim Cook at Apple. It's my son, and it's just his silhouette with the Northern Lights behind him, and he's got his arms showing his muscles. But, okay, y'all, I don't know what other word to use for it, other than my blonde-haired, blue-eyed son has an afro. It is the funniest thing. His hair grows like curly dome. His hair looks like a head of broccoli. And in fact, I say afro, you know the hairstyle that I mean. I wasn't with him. He and his mom was at the grocery store the other day, and there was an older black lady in the line in front of him, and turns around and looks at him and smiles, and she says, "My hair looked just like yours at that age." My wife thought it was fantastic. He was so embarrassed. But yes, so he's got this like massive head of hair in silhouette. I should put it on Instagram. I don't think he would care because he doesn't like to have his face on Instagram, but very rarely, although he did his Trump impression for people. But anyway, it was funny, and I don't know why I got on that, and now I'm going to move off of it. Oh, yes, you should follow me on Instagram. That's the moral of the story. All right, now, brain fart there. I got to move on to some other stuff here. In particular, yet again, the Biden administration is tacitly admitting that the Trump administration made good decisions. Yes, I know. Now, let's back up a couple of days, shall we? The other day, I played you the audio of Fareed Zakaria, who on CNN, no, I'm sorry, it was on PBS. He was being interviewed by Margaret Hoover on Firing Line. And Fareed Zakaria said, essentially, Joe Biden needs to embrace some of Trump's policies at the border. The Remain in Mexico position, for example. Rolling back pervasive amnesty provisions that illegal immigrants are taking advantage of, things that Donald Trump did. That was Fareed Zakaria, the man that Joe Biden listens to. Well, he hasn't done that yet. However, he's acknowledging that Donald Trump might have had the right policy on something else. President Biden announced on Tuesday, that is this morning, early this morning, a sharp increase in tariffs on an array of Chinese imports, including electric vehicles, solar cells, semiconductors, and advanced batteries, in an effort to protect strategic American industries from a new wave of competitors that he said were unfairly subsidized by Beijing. The president also officially endorsed maintaining tariffs on more than $300 billion worth of Chinese goods that were put in place by President Donald Trump. Mr. Biden criticized those tariffs as taxes on American consumers during his 2020 run for the White House. Mr. Biden's moves were the latest trade war escalation from a president who initially pledged to repeal at least some of the Trump tariffs, but now has refused to cede any ground to his rival in a tough on China appeal to swing voters in the industrial Midwest and beyond. They also reflect Mr. Biden's efforts to build on Mr. Trump's, these are the words of the New York Times, not mine, consensus-defying trade confrontation with China, while focusing it on sectors of strategic importance to the United States like clean energy and semiconductors. Wait. You mean, wait, they characterize it as Mr. Trump's consensus-defying trade confrontation. And Joe Biden is embracing a consensus-defying trade confrontation. They attacked Donald Trump for it at the time. And now suddenly Joe Biden is embracing it. Really? Flashback, October 6, 2020. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden said he would remove Donald Trump's tariffs on imports from China, which are taxes on American consumers and companies. An aide later asserted the former vice president would reevaluate the tariffs upon taking office. A Gallup poll in February detected positive views of Americans toward international trade, with 79% viewing trade as an opportunity for economic growth and only 18% considering it a threat. Biden's comments on tariffs came during an exchange with Lulu Garcia-Navarro, who hosts Weekend Edition on NPR. Some have said Trump's stance is a good one to counter China's influence. Would you keep it? No. Hey, look, who said Trump's idea is a good one? Manufacturing has gone into recession. Agriculture lost billions of dollars that taxpayers had to pay. We're going after China the wrong way. China is stealing intellectual property. China is conditioning being able to do business in China based on whether or not you have 51% Chinese ownership. That's got to end. I spent a fair amount of time when I was vice president with President Xi because the president wanted me to get it to know him. He's no Democrat with a small d at all. If you scrap those tariffs, what would you do in return? Garcia-Navarro said. No, here's the deal, said Biden. The question is, what is the appropriate behavior that they have to engage in international relations, in international trade with us, and they have to play by the international rules. And what we've done is we've disarmed ourselves. Okay, there is a lot happening here. First of all, you need to understand something. The threat of China becoming the global economic world power is now virtually zero. Never bet on communists. And the Chinese, we may be struggling against them militarily right now, but economically their economy is collapsing before our eyes. But China, we have a trade imbalance right now. You need to understand that this is technical and I want to simplify it. And my apologies to the business economists who might be listening who get offended that I'm simplifying too much. But trying to raise everybody, and some of you, I got to dumb it down a little bit to get most people where we need to be on this. The American dollar right now is the most expensive currency. Well, I shouldn't say the most, but one of the most expensive currencies. That means that we have a massive buying power right now around the world. That means that other countries cannot come here cheaply because the dollar is so expensive. So I can take the American dollar and I can go to the European Union and I can essentially get 2 euros. Actually, let me do this exchange rate dollars to euros. What is it right now? For every dollar, I can get 92 cents in euros. So let's put another way. For every euro, you can't actually get an equivalence to a dollar. It's cheaper for us to go to Europe right now than it is for a European to come here because of the exchange rate. The dollar is more expensive. Now, let me do another one. Let's do the British. While I got it up here, might as well play around with this for a minute just so you have a sense of it. So if I were to go to the United Kingdom right now, where is the United Kingdom? If I were to go to the United Kingdom right now and try to do an exchange rate with the United Kingdom, actually get even less in the United Kingdom than you do around here, than you do with the euro. In other words, I can go to Great Britain right now and I can spend a lot of money and buy a lot of stuff because it's actually cheaper in the UK for us to do business than if a British citizen were to come here. It would be much harder for the British person to do it. So, for example, for every dollar, I get 79.79 pounds sterling or 79 pence. The American dollar is more expensive than even the Chinese renminbi, I think it's called, the Chinese currency. So one more time, let me do this one more time. They call it the yuan. It is for every dollar, I get 7.23 Chinese yuan. That's actually not good. That means that the United States currency rate is so overvalued right now, I can buy a lot of stuff in China. The Chinese have actually had to start inflating their currency to be competitive against us right now. So, how does all this translate? I'm sorry if I confuse you there when I'm trying to simplify it, but the bottom line is this. Every dollar around the world can buy more than $1 worth of stuff in other countries right now. That means Chinese goods are cheaper for us to buy right now. So we can buy a lot of stuff from China because the currency rate means that for every dollar, we can buy essentially $7 worth of Chinese stuff, making it really dumb for you in the conversion rate. So $1 American can buy you 7 times as much in China. It's not a good exchange rate for China, except it makes Chinese goods very cheap for us. So by adding a tariff, which is what Donald Trump did and now Joe Biden wants to do, they are artificially making Chinese products more expensive for us to buy. There's a couple of problems here, though. One is, even though they're making the Chinese products more expensive with a tariff, you pay it, by the way. China doesn't pay it. What it is you have to pay an additional tax to the American government when you buy these Chinese products. The Chinese don't actually pay it. That's a misunderstanding of the tariff. So you're getting punished for buying the Chinese product. But here's the catch. It's still oftentimes cheaper than the American competing product. So even with the tariff, it's more expensive to buy the American good than the Chinese good. So that doesn't really solve the problem. What could solve the problem is forcing the Chinese to comply with trade rules, which the United States doesn't want to pursue, because the United States oftentimes doesn't live up to its own standards in other countries. And so if we were to force China to follow the rules, other countries would force us to follow the rules. So it's easier to have the trade war with China by imposing tariffs. It's what Trump did. It's what Biden did. And the history of tariffs is it actually is a American tax imposed on the American taxpayer. And it also doesn't actually serve the great purpose. When you add the tariff to the Chinese product and the Chinese product is still cheaper than the American product, you're just making people pay more without actually stopping the trade. There are other ways to compete. But the Biden administration, like the Trump administration, doesn't really want to do that. The Biden administration doesn't actually want to, they don't want to think outside the box. They don't want to embrace Milton Friedman. They don't want to embrace Frederick Hayek. They actually want to embrace failed economists that, frankly, Peter Navarro convinced Donald Trump to embrace for tariffs. And the base of both parties thinks tariffs are great. The problem is the tariffs aren't great. Tariffs aren't great at all. Now, I got to correct myself because I misread the data before I got out of here. The pound and the euro right now have surged back into the lead, so it's actually more expensive for us to go to Europe. 2 weeks ago, it was the opposite. 2 weeks ago, it was cheaper for us to go to Europe than to go here, but it's still a whole lot cheaper for us to go to Asia. Pretty much every Asian country right now it's cheaper for us to go there than for them to come here. I mean, it's crazy. Like for every dollar, we get 156 yen right now. That's wild. Blows my mind, the trading imbalance we have because of our currency right now. Now, why is our currency, just as an aside, why is our currency so much more expensive than everywhere else? Because our currency is the reserve currency for the world in part. So every country on the planet, with the exception of China right now, when they trade in dollars. And in trading in dollars, the exchange rate favors us. It's one reason we want to continue to lead the world. But also, when these countries want to put their money somewhere safe, they put it inside the United States and they buy up our money. And because they've bought our money, it's made our money more scarce. And in the supply-demand curve, it makes the value of our money go up. Why? It's actually a sign that our economy is healthier. Joe Biden is right on that. The problem is it sucks for the middle class because you don't feel that at the grocery store bill. Now, I got to tell you about Hillsdale College, which actually has had some great commentary on this and trade and tariffs and the free market with Imprimis. You should get it. You can get it in your mailbox. EricForHillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, EricForHillsdale.com. You go to EricForHillsdale.com and you get Imprimis for free. It comes to your mailbox from Hillsdale College completely for free. You never pay a penny. Why? Because it's part of their educational mission. At Hillsdale College, they want to provide you leading insight and commentary from the conservative movement, from the leaders of the conservative movement. They want to do in print is kind of what we're doing with the Gathering in August, and it's so worth it. You read it cover. I read mine cover to cover. I have since law school, and I've never paid a penny for it. It's EricForHillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, EricForHillsdale.com. You go sign up for Imprimis. It comes to your mailbox. You get the leading insights, the conservative movement. You become smarter every day thanks to Hillsdale College and Imprimis. EricForHillsdale.com. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Greg Sargent is a progressive, used to be at the Washington Post. He's now at the far left and terribly broken New Republic. He interviewed one of Joe Biden's pollsters on his podcast who basically said that Biden's going to make up his polling gap because he's got more money and Trump's spending all of his money on legal bills. And actually, I mean, that's also part of Biden's rationale I didn't get into at the beginning of this hour, is that he can outspend Donald Trump to make up the gap. And frankly, I think lawfare is one of their strategies. But my goodness, it sure is making Trump seem sympathetic to a great many Americans out there as this goes on. And what's funny to me are the number of people who are pointing out all the would-be vice presidential candidates for Donald Trump are showing up. So J.D. Vance was there. Doug Burgum has been there. Even Speaker Michael Johnson is in the courtroom with Trump today to show of solidarity. And, you know, I saw someone on social media say, this is a defiance of norms. I can't believe the Speaker of the House would be there. I can't believe that a state district attorney would try to prosecute Donald Trump under a state crime for a federal crime that Donald Trump has never been accused of admitting. You want your shattered norm? I would submit that the shattered norm was the state prosecution in New York of Donald Trump for this case. But that's just me. All these shattered norms.